It's the holiday season, which for most of us Northern Hemispherians is associated with winter fun, hot chocolate, building snow people, Arnold Schwarzenegger in Jingle All the Way.
Put that cookie down! Now!
And of course being late for work because of this nonsense. So to keep up with the holiday spirit, what better location to visit in Hyrule than the tropical rainforest of Faron? What? There's no snow here. In fact, I haven't seen a single snowflake around Christmas time for years. Global warming, man.
Another beautiful snowy day in good old Norway.
Alright, that doesn't count. I mean, Norway is basically part of the North Pole, right?
Not really.
Moving on. To round up this year, we'll be taking one final look at the Zonai Ruins together with my friend Conrad from the Commonwealth realm. In this video, we will focus mostly on the Zonai Ruins themselves, the ones located close to the Spring of Courage. Meanwhile, over on Conrad's channel, he will be covering other locations in the area and its ties to Lorellan village. So put on your barbarian outfit, grab your machete, and let's venture into the domain of the Zonai. The Faron province is one of my favorite locations in Breath of the Wild, and could have been my favorite if not held back by the absurd amount of rain plaguing this area. But there's something about a dense rainforest hiding all kinds of secrets. It reminds me of the tales of British explorers like Percy Harrison, who in the early 19th century ventured into the vast Amazon jungles of South America in search of a lost civilization, which you may or may not know from the movie The Lost City of Z. The City of Z, huh? That's a funny coincidence. Anyway, tucked away inside the vast sea of trees and vegetation of Faron, we find countless of ancient structures, all with the same recognizable building style of the Zonai, repeating themes of serpents or dragons, owls, and boar. Though we do find identical ruins in other parts of Hyrule, some of which, like Typhlo ruins, are actually quite large and densely packed, it doesn't compete with the Faron province as a whole when it comes to the sheer number of structures scattered around. No kidding, I actually ran out of stamps trying to mark each and every one of them on the map, which is capped at 100, so it's safe to say that there are well over 100 buildings hidden around these parts. Despite the fact that almost the entire province is littered with these ancient relics from times unknown, only one section of the map is actually named after this mysterious tribe, that being the Zonai Ruins located between Pegasus Woods and Harker Lake. Even the Spring of Courage, which has the largest and most impressive Zonai stoneworks, doesn't belong to the Zonai Ruins, though it is closely connected to it.
So what was the actual purpose of the Zonai Ruins, and Spring of Courage in particular? Well, to get a better picture of this, we first need to outline where the most prominent structures are found in Faron. The Zonai made a clear effort to mark the start and end of their territory, indicated by either two pillars or statues standing side by side, the first of which can be found in the Faron Woods to the west of the province. This practically marks the border, letting any wanted or unwanted visitor to know that they are now entering the domain of the Zonai. A similar set of pillars are found on the other side of the area when exiting Ebara Forest towards Lorellan village, after which any trace of the Zonai stoneworks end. In between these two border markers is where all the Zonai action seems to have taken place, and the northern and southern borders of the domain are mostly sectioned off by natural cliff and mountains. Looking at the map, we see a clear distinction between the three different areas, almost like districts, which all seem to have served different purposes. The first fork in the road is found immediately at the border in the Faron Woods, which is the road leading south into Fural Plain. However, the Zonai didn't build any structures in this area. A plausible reason for this is that, as we can see on the map, the Floral Plain lies eerily close to the domain of the horse god Malani. Perhaps the Zonai wanted to show respect for divine entities, or maybe even feared it, and thus refrained from crossing into his territory. The second branching path is found at the Zonai Ruins themselves, after exiting Pegasus Woods. Similar to the borders in Faron Woods and Ebara Forest, two large pillars are placed here as indications that this is where you enter the district, leading towards the Spring of Courage. And finally, the last fork in the road is found right after crossing the Sarian Bridge. One road leads south towards Martha's Landing, after which any trace of the Zonai ends completely. This road also borders Kuchini Plain, where multiple so-called Zonai towers are found. The other road leads further east towards Lake Floria and is marked by two giant owl statues, which again seems to serve as sort of a border marker to show that this is where a new district starts. Beyond this point, we find a lot of Zonai-made structures along both sides of the Floria River, and even up on plateaus surrounding Floria Falls.
So there we have it. 3 clearly distinct districts, all marked by 2 large pillars or statues standing on opposite sides of the road. And here is where we find something rather interesting. Each of these districts has their own dominant building style. For instance, the Zonai Ruins area predominantly houses dragon statues, while the Lake Floria area barely features any dragons, and instead we find most of the owl statues here, which in turn are not found anywhere near the Zonai Ruins. And the Guccini Plain district features neither, and instead mostly consists of towers and some stray walls. The Dragon District, Owl District, and Tower District, if you will. So now let's return our focus to the Zonai Ruins and Spring of Courage, aka the Dragon District, as the other two will be thoroughly explored in Conrad's video. One of the most distinctive features about this area compared to the others, aside from the plethora of dragon statues, is that we find next to no ruins which look like they may have been used to house people. We do find these large walls, but it's pretty clear that these were not part of a larger structure. Instead, I'm guessing these are retaining walls. Retaining walls is a building technique which was perfected by the Romans, and its function is to hold back the soil and prevent erosion from swallowing up your territory. So they simply prevent the upper level from collapsing into the valley below. We find these walls at the Spring of Courage too, and it doesn't seem like these walls were connected to some sort of rooftop of any kind, meaning the whole place was open to the elements and provided no shelter from the rain. This and the absence of proper housing leads me to believe that nobody actually lived in these parts of the territory. Instead, it was likely a place purely devoted to pilgrimage and worship. In a way, it's very similar to the Great Plateau, which was a holy place for the Hylians and where they too underwent spiritual quests or pilgrimages to pay respect to their deity and their ancient ancestors. The big difference being that whereas the Hylians worshipped goddess Hylia, the Zonai worshipped the dragon spirit Farash.
And here is where we need to dive a bit deeper into the religious aspects of the Zonai. The Hylians, as mentioned before, are all about Hylia, which as you may know is a divine being whose essence is passed on within the royal bloodline. However, Hylia isn't the highest being in this universe. She, along with the world itself, was created by the 3 golden goddesses of power, wisdom and courage, Din, Nehru and Furor. The Zonai seem to have been more old school compared to the Hylians. Instead of worshipping Hylia, who is basically but a mere demigod, compared to the goddesses of creation, their devotion was to this original trinity, which is reflected by the 3 different statues they constructed all over their domain, that being the dragon, owl and boar. Additionally, because the Zonai themselves were all about bravery, combat skills and magic, their attention was primarily focused on the dragon serpent Farash, who in turn is derived from the goddess of courage, Furor. They did acknowledge the other 2 goddesses as well, but because the virtue of courage lay closest to the way of life, this is by far the most dominant symbol in their religion. It is highly likely that every Zonai had to undergo this pilgrimage at some point in their life. Perhaps it was even a test of strength and courage, a way to prove your worth and officially receive the title of a Zonai warrior. The road leading up to the spring could have been filled with monsters and traps, hurdles which needed to be overcome, and tested the bravery of every pilgrim striving to become a strong warrior. Finally, when they managed to reach the Spring of Courage, they would pay their respects to Farash, and the ritual was complete. After this, they would receive the barbarian armor, ready to serve the Zonai military. This is of course speculation, and it could also be that the pilgrimage towards the Spring of Courage was more of a peaceful and spiritual kind, rather than a brutal test of courage.
Whatever the case may be, it's clear that the Zonai valued courage above anything else. The fact that they are described as barbarians, warlike and savage doesn't automatically mean that they were evil. On the contrary, they seem to have been very well aware of the existence of Farash, and it's made clear that the dragon spirits only show themselves to those who they deem to be worthy. Most people in Hyrule are completely oblivious to them, and can just walk right past them without them noticing. Interestingly enough, Rumor Mill Volume 5, titled Dragons Actually Exist, states that there are multiple eyewitness accounts across Hyrule of people claiming to have seen the dragons floating around. Here's the kicker though, all these witness accounts come from children. And the article continues to say that children are pure of heart, meaning they would never lie. The fact that only Link and youngsters are able to see Farash hints that it has something to do with the purity of one's heart. By that definition, the Zonai may have been pure of heart as well, and not the savages they were made out to be. At best, they were misunderstood because of their more primitive lifestyle, but it's clear that the Zonai possessed many talents which rivaled that of the ancient Hylians. They were clearly master stonemasons on par with that of the Hylian stoneworkers. They had a deep connection with nature and their deity, and the fact that the ruins of their civilization have survived the elements all this time is a true testament to the dominance they once exerted before their sudden disappearance. And that wraps up today's video. Be sure to head over to Commonwealth Realm and check out Conrad's video, which goes more in depth into the living conditions of the Zonai, their traditions, skills, and other interesting stuff found in the other so-called districts within Farron. And of course, a big thanks to Conrad for joining me in this video. As always, a massive thanks to my gracious Patreons and channel members. A shout out goes to Flavi, my latest Patreon to join the cause. Thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot. Anyway, that is all for now. This is Don signing off, and have a good one.